Hey everybody, it's Jason here. I am here at the March for Medicare For All at the intersection of Hollywood and Highland. I am honored to be here with Shahid Buttar, who ran for Congress against Nancy Pelosi, a very, very devoted progressive, probably no one that you're going to meet who's more devoted and has done more work through his career and his activism in his life than Shahid. Ran for Congress against Nancy Pelosi up in San Francisco this past year. And so I really appreciate you talking with me. We're here today at the Medicare For All March. You have been a tireless advocate for this. Can you talk about why this is so obviously needed and why you're here today?
Thank you, first of all, for the very kind introduction. That was very warm and gracious. I see Medicare for All, universal health care, as a basic human right. And just like every other international human right that is in exile in the United States, it is absolutely crucial that we who care about human rights advocate tirelessly to establish them. I find it very ironic that the United States, in so many different forums, brags about leading the free world when it's not clear to me that we're even in it. In every industrialized country on the planet, the state perceives part of its role in the social contract with citizens as taking care of at least their health care. It's a basic human right. The system we have in the United States, just remember, everybody gets sick, everybody gets old. And the fact that we have a for-profit system that treats suffering as a profit opportunity or resource extraction opportunity to people at their most vulnerable, when they are literally not even on their feet, being preyed upon by pharmaceutical companies, by health insurance companies, which own Congress and co-opt us. So it's not just healthcare, it's not just human rights, it's also about our democracy, right? We have bipartisan majorities across the United States favoring this policy, and yet it's conspicuous to me that in Congress, it remains very much an outlying.
So my daughter has been victimized. The reason that healthcare is a thing for me, my daughter has a peanut allergy and has to have EpiPens. And 20 years ago, EpiPens used to be very inexpensive. But a while back, Mylan Pharmaceutical bought the company that produces the EpiPen. And did you know that Mylan Pharmaceutical, which has now been bought by another company, has a CEO who I think just got a golden parachute for like $35 million, named Heather Bresch. Heather Bresch is the daughter of West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. It's amazing because she didn't have a background in healthcare, but she somehow made it to be the CEO of a pharmaceutical company. I wonder how that works, you know? And what I don't understand is why in America, every other country in the world that has basically running water and traffic lights has found a way to provide health care to all of its people. But in America, it seems like we are purposely putting profit in front of all of that, and everybody wants to do this all the politicians want to do this dance about how they're not, or how people love their insurance, which is all total horseshit in my view. And so what can we actually do? There's at least 200 million people in America who want Medicare for all today. What can those people actually do? Because the people feel powerless.
The very first thing, you sort of nailed it when you talked about Manchin and his family. And the reason we're in this mess is because we have a Congress composed of millionaires and not community advocates. And those are our choices. If we, the people, feel strongly enough about these questions, we need to replace some long-serving corporate incumbent dynasty politicians with people who have stood for us, we, the people of the United States. It's not, frankly, that complicated. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of late nights. But the conundrum is not so complicated.
Did you find that when you were running in 2020 against Nancy Pelosi, did you find were you surprised by how easy the establishment can just come swoop in and shape public opinion?
I was astounded at the failures of press ethics. For a whistleblower, an elected party official to the San Francisco Democratic Party, to be silenced for an entire year by every journalist who wrote about that story, all of the stories about the dozen different lies that were told about me and my supporters, for her to be silenced for a full year and still to be silenced in the press, even after having published her voice, it does seem to me an astounding demonstration of the willingness of the press to abandon its own interests and journalism in the service of establishment protecting stenography. And not just corporate press, even independent journalists in whose work I'd previously had some respect, were willing to disregard evidence, disregard whistleblowers, silence not just whistleblowers, but keep hidden the conflicts of interest among sources that they did rely upon, and promote not just election disinformation, but I have to be honest about it. I was the target of racist election disinformation published by a newspaper of record. And that is not an attack on me. That's an attack on the voters and on democracy. Election disinformation doesn't just do a disservice to its subjects. It is an attack on a process in which we all share an interest. And to me, as a subject of many of these continuing lies and orchestrated smears, it's disappointing not only to be subject to open white supremacy in a city that I think is long proudly claimed progressive values, but it's particularly disappointing about what it indicates about democracy. And I'm not the only candidate that this happens to. Right?
No, there's been plenty of them. There were so many that were easily crushed by the establishment. It's happening right.
Scott Stringer, Isan Leckie, I could go on. And the particularly thing I would also offer here is the vast disparity between volunteers on political campaigns, who are the workers, and the management consultants, who are paid staff. And when we see press treat paid or former paid campaign staff, party operatives, as if they were grassroots activists or as if they were workers, as opposed to management consultants, mercenaries, there's a crucial recognition of institutional interests or bureaucratic interests that the press has not internalized. And it is a gateway to precisely the same patterns of institutional bias that we've seen played out everywhere from Jim Crow South to San Francisco and China.
Do you think that I see a problem with how average, regular people who don't pay much attention to politics, though I think most people believe that politicians are generally liars. Do you see I see a real problem, and what would you say as far as how you actually educate sort of the silent population that the press doesn't really seem to be on their side at all? Like, I noticed this with the debates. I remember watching Rachel Maddow ask Bernie Sanders, what are you going to do to tamp down people at your rally, at Bernie's rally, saying lock him up about Trump? And I thought, I can't imagine that there's anybody in the country who that's what's on their mind. Why is she asking that question? Why is she, and so I see a press that does not really speak for the people, and I see a people who don't seem to care that the press doesn't speak for them. How do you even go about addressing such an institutional systemic thing such as that?
This is everything from the defense of Julian Assange to people whipping out their phones anytime a police car rolls up on a curb, to people sharing the voices of dissidents and whistleblowers and grassroots journalists that are suppressed in the traditional media. There are a million ways to that. There's no silver bullet. What you're ultimately asking is how to democratize a country that falsely thinks itself to be free. And a big part of that ultimately is about recognition. And I do think that reality is forcing recognition increasingly. The pandemic has done it on Medicare for All. It's one of the reasons we have. Frankly, we had bipartisan majorities even before the pandemic. But also true in the context of, say, for instance, climate justice. Every advancing, successive, compounding, escalating natural disaster or once-in-a-generation storm or flood, earthquake, wildfire brings home that our current inertia of deference to Wall Street interests is going to drive our entire species off the cliff if we're not careful. Medicare for All, I think of as, in the context of that broader global struggle against corporate capitalism, somewhat microcosmic. I think it's particularly pivotal, though, because we're talking about the citizens of the globe's most dominant empire being denied the basic rights. And when we reclaim our resources from the military-industrial complex, I would like to see us turn our empire's weight and resources and energies towards addressing the climate crisis instead of trying to extract every last drop of oil from around the world.
That they could actually take $75 billion out of the $800 billion the military gets, give everybody in this country a free college education, and still have 10 times more money in the military than there is for the next 7 countries combined.
It's heinous. I mean, the idea that our Defense Department has anything to do with defense is foolish, and it doesn't bear any water in the face of the law. The thing I would say here particularly is that it's not just the case that we have been wantonly abusing human rights and committing ecocide around the world for decades. In this context, when we think about Medicare for All, it is the military-industrial complex. It is the hole in our pocket that gives the establishment the disingenuous opportunity to claim that we can't afford to give everybody who needs medicine the medicine that they need. And it's simply not true. Vastly poorer countries do it, and it's particularly because they don't waste all their money on weapons.
You have been a tireless supporter for righteous social causes, for free college for all, Medicare for all, criminal justice reform, civil rights, human rights. How can people stay in touch with you and stay attached to what you are doing in your activism?
Appreciate that. You can follow me online at shahidforchange.us or shahid.fyi. I'm also on all those social media platforms at Shahid for Change, often speaking out and writing. We invite people to check us out and jump in with more the merrier. And this is a movement that we're building far beyond it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much for watching.